Welcome back to the Movement Boss podcast. I am Joe Aguiar. I'm not the Movement Boss. This lady right to my right here is Karin Ravalese. Welcome to episode 2.
What's going on, Joe? How you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, actually. Real quick, just we started, we met here about an hour ago. And I got to tell you, what was my problem when you walked in? You asked me a question, and it was like, oh yeah, I whatever was ailing me, and again, and this is what like I find amazing about you is every time you come by here, you like fix something that's wrong with me. You know what I mean?
Oh, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, I'm sure maybe some of the audience might
chime in and things you couldn't possibly help with.
I'm just joking. I know, I'm kidding. No, because we're just talking about showing some exercises like afterwards, building the strength. Remember, we were thinking about doing that. I said, well, hold on a second. Let me just, make sure, do some perturbation, some of the neurokinetic therapy that I was talking to you about. And we're just kind of going through the different center line, the different diaphragms in the body, just kind of pushing you around a little bit just to see kind of where you fall off axis a little bit. And when I pushed you here, which is, kind of the jaw area, you fell backwards pretty much. That was one of the biggest I
didn't love that.
So we just kind of were going through. I asked you a question because of what my findings were. I just kind of were having you just do different functional tests just to try to get to see where I wanted to do some different testing and have you feel for some tightness and things like that. So I could give you a corrective strategy. And that's how we came up with the swallowing, asking you the swallowing question.
We literally spent like 10 minutes standing just off camera and doing all of this stuff. And again, I mean, I feel like better than before you got here. And so very impressive. Now, I've had a few people reach out to me because we talked about TOS, which is
thoracic
outlet syndrome. Now, a good friend of mine reached out. She's been suffering with it. I told her to get in touch with Karin. My buddy Jonathan also is struggling with something similar. Again, Karin can help you with these things. Now, you've been doing a ton of research. After you initially just helped me and we met, we talked about, maybe you starting a podcast or whatever. You came by the wiffle ball field and you fixed me up. You're going to hear from Dan Merdzik, who's one of my best friends on the planet. Dan's 53 and he's a little old and beaten up now. You'll hear from him later on. But so you came by the field and I was like, hey, my buddy's a disaster. And you worked on him and then a whole bunch of other people. And so it's kind of gotten you into the whole baseball thing. Yes,
definitely. Because I really, be honest with you, I just really didn't have too much interest in
you're a martial artist. So, I mean, you're definitely an athlete. And I think you're somewhat into fighting.
Yep, definitely. And there's similarities. I mean, you think about all the sports. I mean, they really are the same when you think about it. So everything to me is like taekwondo.
Right. Almost every sport has some version of this some way or another. And, again, one of the things we were just talking about is breathing. There's a muscle in here that's like runs across your shoulder. And so you were saying, right, shoulder pain, you could also have swallowing issues they're connected possibly.
They could be. And that's what we found with you. Especially if there's nothing that's working with just other shoulder things. And what really got me into pointing to that specifically mostly was because I kind of started with the perturbation. So that's kind of like a really good start for me. And I just wanted to give you a warm up.
Explain to people what that is.
This perturbation. It's basically, I'm just trying to push the person off of balance. like off their axis, just to see where they kind of fall apart, like it's where your body is in space. So I just kind of go through designated areas, like at the head, the chest area, the pelvic area, and just kind of like just push, very light push, because this isn't a strength thing. Because I really don't want people to try to fight, because you're not going to get a lot of information because they're just going to hold like tightness or tighten up, and you're not going to be able to kind of get a really good read. So it's just relaxed. And Joe, tell the truth. Like I barely was pushing you, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny. I joked with you because again, right, you put your hand here on my chest, just like 2 fingers, and you pushed, and I could literally feel myself kind of going back. And I joked because you are a martial artist. Bruce Lee had the famous 1-inch punch. And it kind of felt like that. No, it didn't feel like that. But again, to see me move from, I mean, you barely touched me. And again, right, we went up here, and again, it was like the same thing. And then, right, we did a few things. We worked a couple of things, made some things happen. And then we did the tests again. Big improvement.
And then we couldn't push it off balance. And then we just did like a couple quick thing to see if we could, and we couldn't. So for basically what that means is this dysfunction, and I even hate using that word, but if you will, that's the word. It was cleared for the time being, but you would have to do your corrective strategies so they would hold better for you.
Some of this stuff is absolutely fascinating. We've got some slides this week that we are going to be breaking out, which I'm excited about, because
me too. I love talking
you've been showing me a lot of stuff, and I'm an idiot. I'm just teasing you. I try to, listen, it's funny. I do a lot of different kinds of podcasts, and right, if I'm going to help the movement boss present a podcast, I've got to understand moving and breathing. And it's so funny. I find I end up learning a lot about the things that the person's doing the podcast about. And this is one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. You know what? Let's get into why this is so fascinating. Again, this TOS thing, so many people I know, particularly people who play ball, have come at me and they're like, "Oh, you have that TOS? I have it." And I'm like, "Oh, mine was like short and temporary." But as you and I have been talking, and let's start off with, I'm going to put up a picture. This is Steven Strasburg, who is a former Washington Nationals pitcher, a phenom. This guy was supposed to be generational talent. And unfortunately, he had battled injuries so often. He eventually had a good year, took that team to a World Series, and then they gave him a huge contract, and he never lived up to it. I don't even know that he pitched again after he signed the contract. And it's funny, you and I were looking at this picture here of Steven Strasburg the other day, and he's doing some things that, it's a still picture, so we're speculating here a little bit because we don't know exactly what was going on there. But as somebody who plays ball, as somebody who often feels stiff, I recognize this motion. His head is cocked completely to the right, and it looks to me like he's trying to stretch that opposite side. Does that jive with what you think you're seeing?
Yes. Or and I love talking about this, and like let's piggyback for 1 second, because the fact that you're telling me about these baseball players, it's interesting with me to see like what their injuries are. And I want to say, I don't want to pick on this gentleman or make it look like I'm making like any kind of accusations or diagnosing anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
But I caught that picture and I'm like, oh, that's interesting that he's looking like that, because knowing that he had the TOS, it just kind of made me think like, did he have the TOS symptoms? Did he have the problem on the right side? Is he trying to like give some relief by maybe getting out of the stretch position that he maybe had on the right? Or is he thinking that he's tight on his left side and he's stretching it, and he's stretching it even more? So it's just an interesting, like, just got me thinking. And to be honest with you, what really kind of got me to really start looking at his injuries was I did like a search to see how many baseball players, because I figured the information would be out there, had been diagnosed with TOS. And, quite a bit of information came up. And what got me to look at Steven Strasberg was they had mentioned, along with the TOS, with his injury, they mentioned carpal tunnel neuritis. So when I heard that, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, because carpal tunnel, it got me to think about another nerve, that the median nerve, which is involved, like it could be entrapped also up in that area along with other nerves. So the fact that they were saying neuritis, it's like, okay, he had carpal tunnel. Well, he maybe had carpal tunnel too, but he might have also had other areas, because there's so many different like things that it could be. So that's like, oh, let me see what other injuries he had. So then I just started kind of like looking and really wanting to understand about that. So I just thought it was, very interesting.
If you're watching this and you're looking at the screen right now, this is part of that research where some 40 different players had TOS. And you made another note in this group of 40 about what half of these guys would eventually have Tommy John surgery, or also had Tommy John surgery.
Well, that's another thing that I actually went to research. I'm like, out of their names, I wanted to know how many of them had Tommy John surgery as well. And over 50% of them did. So that's another thing. And Steven Strasberg specifically actually had the Tommy John surgery before he had the TOS surgery. And the TOS surgery, assuming that basically true TS is somebody who has a cervical rib. But this is like, I'm kind of talking about positional TOS, like kind of like what I've had, what you had, and things. Unless you know you have a cervical rib, whatever. These gentlemen may have had that, but they may have not. So when they have the surgery, they remove the ribs. And sometimes they remove the scalene's muscles or neck muscles. Actually he had neck muscles removed. Sometimes the problem with that is that's attached to like your sternoclavicular joint, which is part of your shoulder, that helps you with your shoulder. So it's very involved in moving your arm forward and backward, which you do need to be doing that when you're pitching and then doing your follow through or batting or whatever you're doing. So you could see why someone would have a problem with that. And then a lot of those surgeries aren't really that successful. There's not like a really good return rate on that. And I actually put that note on there too, that, and I just kind of like put it in quotes because I got it out of the research that I was doing, that they, that's known that a lot of these players that had it, they haven't returned back to their usual play. And to this point here, this is what happened. This is some of the things that he had suffered through my research. Having the surgery, then having another surgery afterwards of rib, some stress fracture that he had with his rib. I don't know if it was a stress fracture, but some stress thing that he had with his rib. So you could see where somebody, like, how that could create more problems. And then, to his credit, like, here's somebody that is still playing the game. They're still pitching. They're still throwing like these, I don't know what his speed was. I know he was clocked at like 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, he was a hard thrower.
Like, he is such like, anybody that would like try to discredit him is kind of messed up. I mean, he's playing with these kinds of things going on. Like, Joe, you had a little bit of a positional TOS, right? Remember?
Yes, I did.
It's painful, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I have too. So it
literally, it felt, for even like a second, it felt like my shoulder like jammed into it was the weirdest and most uncomfortable thing. And I did not enjoy it at all.
No, I didn't enjoy it either.
Terrible pain.
I've actually had, the positional TOS, all three of them. So, and to be quite honest with you, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but, and I remember when I was working with my teacher and, we were just kind of going through, and finally one day I remember I actually ended up getting one of the TOSs that I had never had before, which was the one that you had, the one that's like under the collarbone. And I was like, oh, finally I got this one, because I kind of, as crazy as it sounds, like, in a way, I'm glad that I kind of did and I experienced what it feels like, because I understand, like, it's so annoying, and I feel like I understand the corrective exercises for them, because I've done them myself so many times. and still would do them, unless you're sitting there static and you're not doing anything.
I just learned something that I think you'll find very interesting about Steven Strasberg.
Mm-hmm.
We have his list of injuries up, and the first of the injuries that you have there is listed as May of 2013. We'll get into that in a second, because he made his professional debut in October of 2009, and it was so late in the year because right after he got drafted, he had a neck injury. And was not able to pitch. And he made his major league debut June 8th of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And he had right shoulder inflammation July of 2010. August 27th of 2010, Tommy John surgery.
There you go.
I mean, that's how quick Strasburg, again, as good as he is, out a year and a half, pretty much right off the bat, comes back in 2012. And then, as you'll see, right away, he starts out in 2011. He's on a very limited amount of pitches, sort of does the same thing in the 12. They're really restricting how much he can throw. He actually didn't pitch in the playoffs because he had thrown so many innings in the regular season. They decided to lose in the postseason and not pitch him because they were so concerned about it. Yeah. But then again, Karin, and we can kind of get into this list, but this guy, every few months, it's like there's another injury.
And you know what, too, Joe? Like, reading about him, because I was reading about him, and let's face it, we don't know him personally, but he seems like a decent guy.
I'm sure.
Like a hard worker. You know, they talked about him when he was, younger, and, his college, and how he was overweight. And I guess the conditioning coach called him Slouthsburg and things like that because he was slow. And you shouldn't be in baseball. Give up baseball.
Wow. And
like he put the work in, man. He lost 30 pounds, and he just, like, I don't even know him, and I have respect for him. And plus, he's playing when he's hurting. I know he's hurting.
Yeah. Well, listen, again, to your point, coming back from Tommy John surgery is, especially to be able to perform at the level that Strasburg was able to get at. Again, he took the Washington Nationals, which is a hapless franchise, to a World Series. And, people they give him a lot of credit for how hard he worked. But, man, right oblique strain, right lat strain, left trap strain, left oblique strain, upper back strain. What's all the strains about? What is that? And is that a guy who is in pain, who starts shifting weight or changing techniques to deal with whatever uncomfortable condition he's in?
Well, when I see obliques, I'm always thinking of like core stuff, like intra-abdominal pressure building. Like, did that happen from, like, maybe you lost support from the core muscles first, and it's leaking into the power system, which is the anterior oblique subsystem, which you're going to use. It's rotation. He's pitching. I don't know if he was a batter. I think it did say that he bat.
He did bat, but his primary thing was
mostly
pitching.
But you're still doing all of that, right? Because when you think about it in a pitch, because he was a right-handed guy, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So when he's going back like this, he's putting this external abdominal oblique on stretch, right? But then the internal abdominal oblique on the right, okay, in rotation, because they're antagonists on the rotational plane. That's like shortening. But when he goes to follow through, the external abdominal oblique on the right is going to the left because it's a contralateral, it's an opposite side rotator.
Yep.
And then now the internal abdominal oblique, which rotates you to the same side on the back of the pitch, it's going to the same side. But when he's following through, imagine that pitch is coming. He's a 100-mile-per-hour pitcher, and he's going like this. He's putting that internal abdominal oblique on stretch. people are more prone to get strains when they're on stretch. So if he doesn't have, let's just say he's tight in that oblique, right? And he can't get in, or maybe he's having a hard time breathing, right? Remember I told you those muscles are primary muscles of breathing. Internal abdominal oblique is involved. It's one of the primary muscles of breathing. And if you're not getting good expansion from the sides of your ribs and you're tight here and you're putting yourself here on stretch and you're coming out and you're like a power guy, can you imagine the amount of, like, you could see why the person could potentially get a strain. So maybe it started from that. Joe, we found that in you, when we kind of hacked into you, right? Because you do golf, right? We're using it in a golf sense, but it's the same thing when you're pitching. It's exactly the same thing because you have to come up here on a pitch, and this is where you are falling apart. And again, I use neurokinetic therapy to kind of hack you with regards to golf. It's the same thing that I just did here with you earlier.
One of the things I have done since I met Karin, whether it's golfing or it's when I'm playing wiffle ball, is I take warm-up swings from both sides. Both sides. You take some righties, you take some lefties, even if you don't ever swing left-handed. Right? I mean, it's people just tend to work the side that they work. That's not good either.
Because, and to your point, even with that, he also ended up with a left oblique strain. He started with the right first. So I totally can understand. I mean, I don't know what oblique muscles were strained. It doesn't tell you. It just says obliques.
Yep.
But I'm putting the scenario in the event that maybe, just hypothetically speaking. So he could have, who knows when it happened? Like, did it happen here? Or did it happen in the follow through? And then now you're on the left side. So you got to consider the left side too, because don't forget the left side has to shorten and lengthen. So the left side is going to lengthen when you're doing the opposite. So he, you know what I mean? He could have fixed this side and then this side got no love. And it's like, okay, I'm tight too now. I need your help. And then you just never know what's going to happen. And, we play, we move around, we're moving around. We're dynamic people. We're not always static. So you're changing. You can have a problem on the right. You can have a problem on the left, and you could go back and forth. So you're never just a one and done. You're never going to be a one and done. So I mean,
a terribly tragic tale is Strasburg. And again, we've seen so many of these guys who have the TOS. And so again, for anybody who is struggling with that particular area, we've got some really good stretches that we did that, again, it's not something I had been dealing with long term, and you made the pain go away completely. Again, I'm like, oh my God, she's a miracle worker. And you're like, well, also you weren't dealing with a chronic situation, because that might be a little bit different.
True. And, this is kind of a little bit of a lucky find, because I wonder how many other people might have that perception of weak. Like, you don't know you have it. I wouldn't either. Like, there's a couple simple quick tests you can do just to see. Right. You could do a grip test. That's going to kind of give you an indication if you have something, based off of where might have a discrepancy from side to side, depending on your arm being overhead as opposed to, just kind of like at your side type of thing. So that, there's a couple quick functional tests that can be done. Like, I feel like people that are doing overhead sports should, not just baseball, but like, what about volleyball players? What about swimmers, right? Because they got to do whatever. Anybody like
tennis?
That. Tennis, exactly. Tennis.
Pickleball.
Oh, that's right. Pickleball. Even golfers too, right? But the golfers aren't really complaining that much about that stuff. Some of them do, whatever. But for the most part, they're probably their back is kind of the biggest thing. But I feel like they should be screened, especially kids. Because if you can kind of try to jump in front of this a little bit, or at least have a strategy when you do it, or at least set yourself up for success, that you're going to bounce back a lot faster. You're not going to be throwing like X amount of pitches crappily and then have a problem, or maybe you breach your capacity. Maybe you're good. You're solid. Like, oh, I can throw like 100 pitches and I'm great. But the minute I throw the 101 pitch, I'm running into a little bit of a problem. But maybe I stop myself in between, and now I have my little drill I can do Or if I let myself get out of hand, now I have my little drills I can do to kind of put me back on place again. So I'm not constantly, feeling like crap all the time.
Now, in your research, you came across something kind of interesting. And it's the Philadelphia Phillies pitcher Aaron Nola, who is a Cy Young Award winner, has a 20-game winner, an outstanding pitcher, one of the quality pitchers of the National League. Now, this past May, he had, I believe it was an ankle injury to start.
Right ankle
injury.
And he did it through agility drills. He did during agility.
He was doing agility drills.
So I don't know what kind he was doing. If
he was doing side to side, or messed up his ankle. Yeah, probably they're probably doing that. Where they
karaoke.
One of those.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that then turned into
right oblique strain. And then that just, I don't know how he got on my radar, though. I don't know how he specifically did, because I was doing TOS and he doesn't have any, and there's nothing about him with TOS.
I think, wasn't it something to do with breathing? I thought that's where we initially came up with that.
You know what might have did it? Because when I was like doing some research, I think he might have came up talking about things.
Yeah.
And I think what he said is he didn't want to do surgery.
Right.
Yeah, that's
exactly
what got me.
What
so I liked
didn't want to do surgery.
I liked how he talked, and how he was. He was just like, I'm not really sure, because I wanted to see, because they were asking him like what he thought he did. So I was interested to like, I wanted to hear what he did to get that oblique strain. And he said he really just didn't know what he did. Like he wasn't sure like what caused it and things like that. So I think I knew about the oblique strain first before I knew about the ankle. I don't know. Cause then I kind of was like, oh, what's
I think the oblique strain we found out, and then found out a few weeks earlier had the left ankle. And so again, right?
Yeah, it's the same side. He had actually the same side. Yep.
Okay. So again, I think the other big point though is how, and I think if people can learn anything from this, it's that everything can be compounded because of how connected everything is. Mm-hmm. That, again, we were talking about a muscle in my neck and then in my shoulder and how it was affecting my swallowing. Do you see how this this is all very connected stuff there? And I think for most people, you don't even think about that stuff. No. Or you wouldn't think if you had a shoulder problem and you were struggling, to swallow. I don't know that people would just logically be like, oh, it's got to be connected, because they don't think about that kind of stuff.
The only reason I know about it is because I had an awesome anatomy teacher. I have like the best teacher who I've mentioned to you before, Dr. Kathy Dooley. And I study this stuff all the time because I want to know. When somebody tells me something, like I want to hear what they have to say, and I want to be able to help them. And the only way that I can really help somebody is if I'm really studying and I'm trying to understand what's happening. I try to put it even into my own body. Like a lot of, I can understand stuff too, because I've had things, that's part of it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I really didn't kind of really start really trying to work with people heavy until I really kind of was getting into this like myself, like really trying to do this myself. And, just even with the martial art background, it's been very helpful because I basically changed the way I think about my training, and really not to switch it up a little bit, because I would like to have one of my friends on here at some point that is a master, or actually he's a grandmaster, have him on here and we just kind of talk about one of the instructors that we had, because this instructor, he's passed away now, but he changed a lot of the chambering positions from different than from what other styles were. We're all the same style, but he just changed up the positioning. Mm-hmm. And there was always like a big pissing contest between everybody about the chambers. Oh, chamber up here. Oh no, you need to chamber here, and blah, blah, blah. It was just like, even me too, it was a little annoying. But the more I started learning the anatomy and understanding like where it's connected and things. When I looked back in retrospect at where he was telling people to chamber, this grandmaster who's passed away, I was like, this man is brilliant. Like, I always loved him. I always thought he was great. He was just such a great guy. Grandmaster Lee was his name. Wonderful man, smart, just awesome. I thought to myself, I even had even more respect for him, knowing, like, starting to understand the anatomy. I'm like, he's a genius. He literally was trying to put his students in the best possible situation, because you think of some of the people that are doing martial arts, right? Maybe they're just not everybody. I don't. But some people maybe were just doing it like for their own personal exercise, and they were maybe doing it 3 days a week or something, and just for an hour, and the rest of the day, maybe they were sitting down at a desk job. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but let's hypothetically say they were, right? You want to make sure that you can get those people in the best possible position that you can. And sometimes what you're dealing with at that high level like that, you change it up a little bit. And he did. He had some of the chambers coming from where a lot of these points are on the muscles. And I thought it was smart. And it's a way where people aren't going to get tripped up. Like, for example, when we chambered high like this, right? He didn't. He changed his a little bit lower, which I think is actually great now that I understand that. I struggled with that positional TOS for the longest time. And a lot of it, I was giving it to myself based off of some of my positioning my hand position. Yeah. And I think it comes down to, I think a lot of people do that, just even with our movement in general. And we're just kind of playing through things, but maybe we can make a couple little adjustments. Not everybody, right? Maybe not everybody has that problem. Not that it's a problem, but what if you could make things better and continue to do what you like to do without always feeling that, you're dying the next day, or it takes you, like you had said to me, takes you like a whole week to recover.
How many people do we talk to too at wiffle ball that when you're literally exercising. Said that? Well, right. And look, I think that's the big thing. Not only should you not be participating in your extracurricular activities, whether it be golfing or softball, wiffle ball, kickball, pickleball, you shouldn't be in pain. And if you've just sort of grown accustomed to pain, and you just think that's, well, I'm a little bit older, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50, I guess pain just comes with the territory, you're kind of being a dummy here. There are things that you could be doing. There's precautions you could be taking. Listen, even if maybe you're just a housewife. I don't mean to say just, but maybe that's your jam. Maybe that's where you get all of your everyday activities. And that's also where your pain and soreness comes from. It doesn't have to be like that. I've been doing that for so long, just always having something nagging and being in pain to the point where, I mean, some of it kind of takes the joy away from participating in some of those activities.
Yep. Or you just keep doing it anyways because you're like trying to figure out like why you're in pain. You're still repeating the movement over and over again because you like doing it, and you're like, damn, why do I always feel like crap? And then once you kind of figure it out a little bit, you're like, okay, let me slow it down a little bit and then try to see if I can die some of it down or whatever, or just have like something in place in case it happens again, that type of thing.
Also, one of these things that we came up with, and again, you're going to meet our friend Dan in a few minutes. Dan Murzik is a good friend of mine, a wiffle ball teammate of mine, a guy who's been playing. I've been playing baseball, softball, wiffle ball with Dan since I was 15 years old. And I it's funny, and he'll kind of tell the story, but I noticed this guy had some grip loss. And we have some icy hot, like a roll-on stick. I mean, we share it. We just share it back and forth. There's no shame there at all. And after you treated me, I just remember thinking like, man, you know who really needs to meet you? My buddy Dan. And it was super interesting because he did something that I know he hates. he lost the grip on a bat. And I'll let him tell the story, but that's another big thing. And I think we've been finding that with a lot of the people that, we've got a chance to talk to and work with a little bit, is the grip loss. And again, just in sort of figuring out what, you can kind of get a sense of, and you almost sort of can guess when you see somebody like, this shoulder bothering you? Yeah. Like, some of these things become obvious to you just based on where you're seeing things. You kind of explain that and talk about it a little bit.
Oh, you mean the with the ball?
Yeah.
Well, this is why we had this conversation, you and I, on Saturday, about the way you guys grip the ball.
Yep.
Remember? And you say you just use these 3 fingers, the thumb and then these 2 here. So remember, I was telling you about not to get too much anatomy on people. Remember I told you about that median nerve.
Yep.
And then the whole TOS thing, right? So when you have the TOS, right, you're going to lose your whole hand, basically, whole hand numbness, or you'll lose the grip in the whole hand. But if you have the median nerve stuff, you're really only going to kind of lose, like, potentially the feeling in these 3 things. So can you imagine? So let's just say you got the whole shebanger, right?
Yeah.
Well, Steven Strasberg supposedly had carpal tunnel neuritis. Okay, so let's just say median nerve, right? And maybe no TOS for him, just the median nerve. He's still holding the ball, right? Say he doesn't have the conduction of that nerve, right? It's entrapped, right? Okay, they're thinking it's maybe entrapped at the carpal tunnel. It very well could be, but there's like 6 other entrapment sites for the median nerve. And you know what? It's coming up here. It can come entrapped in the neck and all of that. So if this guy is trapped all around here and he's losing it, and then all of a sudden he goes to throw, he could be the strongest person. He could be the best thrower. He could be the best pitcher. But if you don't have the actual juice, the drive, the neurology to your arm or your hand or whatever, what's going to happen? And you mentioned to me also that you've even noticed this about some other people, that the ball like changes, like the trajectory of the ball changes. So it just makes you wonder, like, hey, do you think maybe the person's losing the grip or something? Like, it's just, I'm not saying that that's the case, but it's just interesting.
It's certainly something to look at.
Well, why not screen people for it?
Right on.
You're not going to hurt anybody.
Well, again, we notice, generally speaking, people who throw really fast have a really hard time controlling the direction of the ball. A lot of the times it tails one way or the other. And I said to Karin, I wonder how much of that could be just grip loss and just literally not being able to
connect, or you just lose the sensory,
right,
like you're losing like the connect, like you can't feel it. It's like the sensory, you're losing like the sensory stuff.
You might even just have some minor numbness in your finger and not even really realize it. But again, I mean, if you don't have your full grip, that ball's going to start moving. And here's the thing, when you throw really hard, if you don't throw strikes, it doesn't matter. You have to be able to throw the ball in the strike zone. And it seems to me a lot of these hard throwers struggle with that, which makes me think a lot more of these guys are dealing with grip issues and maybe don't even realize it.
You wouldn't. We didn't know. I never know either, because I never have numbness and tingling in my hands. Okay, I never do. I never lose any kind of feeling. Like some people actually legit have that happen to them, right? It's never progressed that bad, and it didn't happen to you. You didn't have because you didn't even know about it. So that's just the point. Like you just don't really know unless you like test for it, or you're just screening for it, and you're not really doing anything crazy. You're not doing any of these like these little pricks in your arms, or it's nothing. You could just a couple of quick things you can do just to screen for it. I just, that's something I actually would love to do, because I mean, why not? If you could put yourself in a better position, I'm not saying I'm changing somebody's whole world here, you know what I mean? But if you could put somebody in a better position or situation and prevent them maybe from getting like further damage or damage, I mean, why would you not do it?
Yeah. You know, it's funny, all throughout my wiffle ball season, and another successful season at that, by the way, Karin came out to a lot of it. And even at times when you didn't, you know, you and I, that's the other cool thing. You and I, you know, you'll recall we had a video meeting. You and I did a Google Meet, and I, you know, again, it's like,
that's how it started. Yeah. I didn't want to say anything to you.
She was literally able to, on the computer, talking back to me, just had me do some things, and I completely relieved the pain. So, you know, listen, here's the other great thing about you. This is something I was literally telling my wife this, because she's super interested in, because she's got chronic back pain.
Oh.
Always shoulder, neck. I mean, always having some issue or another. And I said, you know, part of what Karin does is she teaches you things that you do so that you don't become, because I don't like therapists. I feel like a lot of times therapists, chiropractors to a certain extent, a lot of times people just have you come and they fix you, and I'll see you on Thursday. Right. And it's like you show up and they're just going to do it all for you. You're teaching people about what's going on and showing them things that they can do to alleviate the pain so that they don't need to come and see you all the time and basically just become a patient.
Exactly. And I'll tell you the truth. I would love to collaborate with a chiropractor, or like even like a neurologist or an orthopedic surgeon, because they don't do any type of corrective strategies and things like that. I think it would be cool, because I feel like we could be like a team together and help people even more, because everybody has their thing. And I think we all could learn something from each other. And chiropractors have a very, very extensive background and knowledge. They do a lot with the nervous system. Like they understand all of that and things. So I would definitely I'm interested in a collaboration with that. So I don't think it's one person solves everybody's problems.
Yeah. If somebody is interested in doing a collaboration, please, by all means, we would love for you to reach out, which you could certainly do. All right. Oh man, here. Oh, look at this. Look at this guy. Here he is.
The legend lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Murzik. So
hello.
Dan, if you would please, you earlier in the year, I didn't want to tell the story because I'd like people to hear it from you, but you threw your bat or lost the handle on your bat a couple of times. And I was talking to my friend Karin here, and I was like, my man Dan is old school. He hates bat flips, and he lost the handle on his bat a couple of times. That's what I do. He's not like that. I think there might be something wrong with him. And so do you want to maybe take it from there and just sort of talk about, you know, what you and Karin talked about? And by all means, Karin, you know, if you want to add to the story, but please, Mr. Murzik, take it away.
There is definitely something wrong with me. When
we know.
I can't hear him.
I didn't know you were talking about my hands, though.
That's hilarious.
But yeah. So I was talking to Karin. Karin pointed out did a few tricks with my fingers and pointed out that I was having a grip issue that, you know, probably had for years, that I've been struggling with as I get older. So she worked with me a little bit on how to rediscover that grip and make my fingers and dexterity stronger.
Now, right after she did that, as I recall, you were on the bump. And you were outstanding. You looked like Dan Murzik in his 40s. It was a retro throwback of sorts. And you actually said to me, I haven't thrown that well in 5 years.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think I threw that well in like 20 years, to be honest.
Wow, that's great. I'm happy to hear that.
Well, again, I you know, I was mentioning just before we had you come on, Dan, you and I share the Icy Hot Roll-On. You and I have patches. You know, you and I are like two old ladies sometimes, kind of sitting there going over our soreness regimen and how to get ourselves right. And just because we're older, we don't need to show up all beat up.
No, smelling like Ben Gay and lidocaine patches all over the place.
It's funny.
Now, Karin was wondering if you'd be open to getting a couple of follow-up sessions here. Let her because one of the other things you had was I remember you saying about the pickle jar, struggling with the pickle jar.
Oh, the pasta sauce jar. Forget it. I can't
pasta sauce jar. You don't eat pickles.
No. I have to hand that off to the wife. That's where I'm at with the rotator cuff.
Dan, let me ask you a question. Because again, I mentioned you and I have been playing ball together for most of our lives. How often do you play ball or do you get to golf where you're not in some sort of pain or discomfort?
Well, the only time I'm not in pain or discomfort is where I adjust what I normally do to avoid it, which isn't good, as you know, in sports. When you change things in your normal routines, you adjust your body to avoid the pain, which after talking to Karin, I was able to go back to my natural motions, the things I've been doing, like riding a bicycle since you're 10 years old. You go through back to the motions and you can go back to what's natural. So it was, the pain was there, but it was more annoying that I had to rediscover like how to do things I've been doing for years because I needed to avoid the pain.
It's so interesting you say that because I one of the things I recently discovered while I was working with Karin is I have a tendency when I think I'm going to get pain, whether it's driving when we're on hole 14, I hold my breath because I am fearful pain's about to shoot up my back. And that to me is the best way to avoid it. And holding your breath while it's exercising is a terrible idea.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Do you find that for yourself? Do you find that happens?
I could tell you, even after talking with Karin and as the summer went on, I was asked to come out and play some ball, with the running bases. I remember getting a great hit, some modified pitch softball. I rounded first. Everything felt great. And I was asked if I wanted a courtesy runner, and I kind of like got angry and said, "What, are you kidding me? Just because I'm 52 doesn't mean I need a courtesy runner." Sure enough, on the next hit, by the time I got around second base, I was holding my hamstring and running it all out and even like the stretching at this point, at this age, while you should be doing it, isn't helping 100%. So like when I stretch my arm, my arm was fine. I'd stretch it. It'd feel good. I drive around with an elastic band actually in my Jeep to get that arm going. But sometimes it's the simple fine motor stuff that Karin was talking about. And it's a simple fix of that grip in your fingers, which I never thought about as being a factor. I always thought arm, never hand. And she pointed out the hand and had me working on it.
Well, the thing, can Dan hear me okay? Dan,
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
The thing about it too is the hand, basically the problem really was coming from the neck, because you have the brachial plexus, which basically is this big thing of nerves that basically innervates your whole arm, elbow, hand, goes all the way into there. So if the fact that you had an entrapment in that area, you lost the grip in a certain position. So that kind of gave me a little bit of an indication of where to give you some of those exercises. So that was more like specific to you. And I don't think that it was the hand. The hand was like more like of a symptom to you based off of what was happening from there.
Yeah, I recall that conversation.
Yeah. And even like, like with rotator cuff, people say like rotator cuffs and stuff like that. But, if you're like entrapped up at the neck or just, in that area and stuff, like that's all. The rotator cuff is like the C5, C6 area in the neck. So if the brachial plexus, just to give you like an indication. If it's like from C5 to T1 area, right, in your neck, and that is being impeded upon, or, you know, there's tightness, you know, certain areas, you're not going to be able to get the supply to your shoulder or your hand and things like that. So is it really always the rotator cuff? Maybe not. Would the rotator cuff be affected muscles? Sure, they would be, because they have that section of that nerve root that is also being impeded upon by other nerve roots, would be impeded upon also, not just the rotator cuff ones. So it's just, you know, really trying to like open up the space, because the space is tight already as it is. And, you know, if you're putting too much pressure on one area over the other, you know, trying to maybe prevent that from happening by just putting yourself in a better position, and then slowing the movement down and making sure that the movement is coming from where it needs to come from. Because, you know, we did do a little bit on the neck, but then we were also working on the shoulder blade. Correct. And it was your shoulder blade that kind of was a little stuck. So just slowing it down and being able to move just the shoulder blade for you, where you were different, you weren't the shoulder blade.
Yep.
That's what got you the best results, because it was more specific to you, and you weren't just doing these blanket exercises, like just going like this, or, you know, this, or whatever, you know, people typically do. That's what I think would get the person, you know, the best results. And then from there, you know, start to build some kind of strength on it, off of like incorporating it into like a whole subsystem of movement. So you're not just always thinking about the shoulder all the time. Now you're thinking about the shoulder and how it works with the opposite side hip. So, you know, but thinking like that, and using exercises that are more favoring that, I think are great, rather than isolating things, because we don't really work in isolation. In just pitching and batting, I mean, you're really using your whole body. You're really getting everything together, and then really just coordinating that at a lower level. You're not going like balls to the wall like you would be doing if you're playing baseball or any sport, and just working it up. Build the strength on it, build the stability, then build the strength on it. And you can always change whatever mode you want to. Like, you don't have to always like, oh, if you're, say you lift 10 pounds, you don't have to go to 15 pounds. You can change the position of whatever like implement you have. Like, for example, I'm also DVRT certified, so I use the sandbags. And what I really like about those is you can still use the same weight, and you just challenge the position, or you can change the speed of the bag, or things like that. So that's so impactful, because when you're doing these sports, you're moving, your body's moving, it's like positioning in certain ways. So this kind of really helps guide it in a nice way, and you're not wasting your time. Like, a lot of people just don't have time to exercise. They don't want to exercise. So work on the things that are going to help you in life, and it's going to help you with your baseball, but it's also going to help you, you know, carry your groceries in the car, or when you go to bend down to pick up your socks or something, like, just to know that you're bending correctly, or you're reaching for something in a way that's not going to hurt you.
Dan, what's your stretching regimen like when you get to the golf course, or when you get to the wiffle ball field?
It's definitely not what it used to be. But Karin makes a lot of sense. When I stretch the arm, and you stretch different parts, you kind of generalize it. You think about your muscles, you think about your tendons, you think about your ligaments, and you're stretching all that. But the way she was pointing it out was fine-tuning like little points in your neck, or little points. She was pointing out my chest, and those are things you don't think about when you're thinking about your arm, so to speak. So she kind of put my mind on some other things that I definitely overlook in general stretching. So it was eye-opening, and the way she says it's individual. So she looked at what I was doing, she looked at my posture, she looked at other things, and realized that, you know, what Dan needs is not generally what everybody needs, and she was able to pinpoint the things I needed to work on that I would have definitely never entered my mind.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's so fascinating. Literally was telling her that earlier. I mean, I like to try to take my health a little more serious. I'm doing a podcast with her about this stuff, and I've been trying to deep dive and learn more about it. And it really is so fascinating, to understand. And I mean, I guess if you really thought about it, it does all make sense. Everything is interconnected, right? How often you start leaning back to one side and then you start feeling pain on the other side or extreme soreness on the other side, and it's funny. One of the things you said early on about, being sore all the time is you're always sort of adjusting for, right? If there's pain on the left side, it's a right heavy kind of day. And it sort of takes some of the joy away, but you're only setting yourself up to feel even crappier afterwards.
Yeah, because you're using parts of your body you just never do. And just by making those adjustments, I can imagine that leads to that. Mm-hmm. So like by doing what she did, I was able to bounce right back to what I've always done, which felt natural. And unfortunately, I don't know if I was able to sustain it throughout the season. Actually, you know how it ended for us. But I had wished that I was able to revisit some of that.
Definitely.
He could have used you late in the year.
So I told you to call me. I definitely, so
the age exposed itself later in the summer.
Oh, God, the age. But you know what? Let's just, like, for example, let's talk about what with the shoulder blade, right? It was a little stuck, right? You had a little bit of a hard time bringing it back.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We went over that a lot. You corrected me many times.
But you did. I don't think so. I feel like you got it. It was just, it's weird, like, just to try to isolate that. It's weird to isolate that. So imagine being stuck, right? Where you can't get it to go back, right? You need to be able to do that to go like this to pitch. So if you could see now and understand why you would have a shoulder problem, right? But you have a shoulder, like, I guess it's more of a symptom than you really would have a problem. Sure, you have a shoulder problem, right? But you can't move your shoulder blade back and forth. Like,
right.
You can't get it in this position. That has to be in like a retracted position when you go back in the pitch. So it's stuck. So that's gonna, with you too.
Yeah.
Yours was different. The collarbone. You need to lift the collarbone up when you go back.
Right.
You were stuck down this way. So you could see why over and over again going back and still being stuck in the other position and just cranking as you throw the pitch, or even with the bat. So you could see where somebody could end up with more, damage in other areas, or start to feel things in your hands and think. So it's just interesting how the body works. I like to study this stuff because I really want to help people with this.
How are you feeling right now today, sitting here on 10th day of school?
10th day of school. Yeah, I wish I was back at the beginning of June. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I can't imagine. What grade do you teach, Dan? What grade?
7th grade.
Oh, okay. What subject?
Social studies.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I wish I was on the
love
field.
to be in one of your classes. I swear.
What's up?
I wish I could be in one of your classes.
Yeah, I wish you could too, but you wouldn't be in there long. But hey, Karin, I appreciate you wearing that shirt in honor of my appearance. Joe knows exactly what I'm.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, you have to tell me, and I'll tell you whose shirt this is too.
Well, listen, wiffle ball legend Dan Murzik, my homie. I appreciate you coming on. Mm-hmm. I know you hate doing press.
Yeah. Well, I told you my agent cleared this one.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on and talking about this.
Karin, thank you for opening my eyes to some things.
Yeah, no problem. And if you need, help again, let me know, please.
Oh, that's definitely going to be coming down the road, I'm sure.
Good.
Are we doing fall ball?
I don't know. Sunday mornings. You able to?
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll have to bring Karin with us.
Yeah.
All right,
Welcome.
Dan, thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, my man.
All right. Take care,
Thanks,
guys.
Dan. Nice seeing you again. Have a good one.
Isn't he the best?
He is. He's a great guy.
He is such a good dude. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that was good. He's a good dude.
He is a great dude, and I'm glad we could fix him up, and we want to fix you up too. So if you are interested in meeting with Karin, again, this is quite affordable, and especially if you're looking to avoid surgery or anything like that, you might as well get a look first. If you're seeing someone currently and you feel like you're just seeing them and seeing them and seeing them, and it's not really curing it, it's worth having a conversation.
Definitely. Yeah, I would just say definitely. I had a conversation with one of your friends already.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, listen, everybody, keep it coming. Big thank you to Dan Mertzik, and a big thank you to Steven Strasberg, because without him, really, the first half of this show would have been about a nobody. Just kidding. Anyway, for Karin Ravalese, I'm Joe Aguiar. Thank you for checking out episode 2 of the Movement Boss Podcast.